This episode is brought to you by Fox One. Watch all 104 matches of the FIFA World Cup live in 4K for just $19.99 a month with 3 days free. Build your own multi-view, choose up to 3 streams, and follow player spotlights. Stay on top of every moment with live stats, highlights, and instant replays. The FIFA World Cup, streaming live on Fox One. Offers are subject to change. See fox.com for complete terms and conditions.
Can the person who sacks groceries in Green Hills afford to live there? How far is a first-year teacher traveling to work every day in that metro classroom? Those are the questions Matt Wiltshire wrestles with in his latest career. Finding and financing affordable housing in Nashville. Places with reasonable rents that can actually stay that way.
We want to hold on to properties that folks who work in those communities can actually afford to live in. Because what's happening today is that people are getting pushed further and further out. There is still housing that's affordable. Unfortunately, you've got to drive 65 miles to find it in some cases.
With $5 gas.
With $5 gas. It's making the traffic worse, it's ripping our communities apart, and it's making Nashville a less interesting place to live. I think this world has gotten so segmented and we're all in our own silo. I think when we have communities where folks live in proximity to each other, it's just a richer environment for all of us.
Matt worked in Mayor Carl Dean's office, then ran for mayor himself. Could that happen again? We'll talk about it. I'm Demetria Kaladimos. It's Banner and Company. Well, Matt Wiltshire.
Demetria Kaladimos.
So good to see you.
It's good to see you too.
You know, you're already very well known in Nashville, probably best known from your mayoral run in 2023. I'm curious, do you still have any of the signs in your garage?
No signs in the garage. I think there is some literature in the base, some letterhead in the basement. I'd have to go check. T-shirts, maybe a few leftovers. But no, that stuff's all packed away.
All in all, though, a good experience?
It was actually a great experience. I'm so happy that I did it. I've always been interested in public service, been interested in this city. And so I think there would certainly be a part of me that would regret it had I not ever tried it. And I'm so grateful that I did. And I'll tell you, most days I'm grateful that I am not the mayor. It is a tough job and admire the work that Freddie's doing and I'm really hopeful for our city.
You know, you have a resume that's sort of tailor-made for politics, public work, leadership. Was that by design? Were you this young 12-year-old going, I'll go into finance, then I'll do this, then I'll do that?
Yeah, the finance was certainly a bit of a deviation from the trail. I've always been interested in public service. I think any of my friends from high school would probably tell you that they saw that in me. I was actually just speaking to the Baptist Healing Trust, and Samitha Keller, formerly Samitha Banerjee, was there. She's known me since 6th grade, and she'd probably have some stories to tell about my interest in public service at a young age. But the going into finance was a bit of a left turn from that. But it's a career that I really loved and think I got a lot out of. And super grateful that I did it. And certainly it's led me to each step along the way. So it's been a fun journey.
What was your first paying job, though?
First paying job was at Compton's Foodland. Well, that's actually not true. I was a babysitter. Stuart Clifton, former district council member Stuart Clifton, was one of the first families, Stuart and Louise, were the first families that I babysat for. And I also worked on our family farm, both in Nashville and in Texas. And so worked those jobs. But the first sort of paycheck from a real company was as a bag boy at Compton's Foodland at the corner of 21st and Blair.
And do you still remember the proper way to put the eggs and where to put the other stuff?
Not only do I remember, I often will sack my own groceries when we go to the grocery store, much to the chagrin of the professional staff who would do it way better than me, but it's fun and I'll do it all the time.
Kids don't work regular jobs anymore, or do they? Am I just out of touch?
Well, so my wife and I have 6 kids between us, and so we've had quite the survey of various jobs, and they've done all kinds of different things. There has been a shift in employment for sure, but we've had kids do babysitting and work in a whole variety of different jobs, including at Western Express, where my wife works. Cleaning out a truck is a tough gig, and I admire anyone who does that work.
You know, almost everyone agrees that Nashville is too darn expensive.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to a place to live. And you've decided to tackle that specifically. That's a heavy load to lift.
Well, the biggest mountains are the ones that are most fun to climb. I think that's always been true. And when that mountain really is to the benefit of your city, it makes it so much easier to get up in the morning, and it's really exciting to get to do this work. I mean, this is, I think, something I've consistently tried to do is look around, see what the biggest challenges are, and then try and tackle those. So as you may recall, I worked previously in the mayor's office, joined Carl Dean at the end of his first term when unemployment in Nashville was over 8%. And there were a lot of families that were really struggling. It was the depths of the Great Recession, and there were big challenges. It was before Nashville was the it city. And so we went out and aggressively tried to get as many jobs as we could. And I'd say we did a pretty good job of that. Unemployment 8 years later at the end of that time was 2.0%, which was the lowest of any city in the country. But the problem with that is when you have a bunch of folks who move here, it drives up housing costs, and we saw that. And so that's really shifted my focus to focusing on affordable housing and making sure that this is the kind of place where folks who were born here, raised here, worked at Compton's Food Land can still afford to live here. And I think that is one of the most significant challenges facing our city.
Was the surge and the timing of that surge part of the equation?
I think for sure there were a whole bunch of factors. I mean, look, Nashville isn't in a bubble. There were a variety of things that were happening nationally, everything from the trend of folks wanting to move to cities, growth of the Sun Belt, shifting of jobs out of higher tax markets into Nashville. All of those things were happening. But the reality is we added too many high-wage jobs and not enough housing. There needs to be enough supply to meet the demand, and Nashville has not met that moment, unfortunately.
Yeah. You've got a particular success story to tell, though, that's fairly recent, and it's kind of complicated. Has to do with some older apartments in town.
Yeah. Tell
me the story.
It's a really fun one. Well, let me take a step back and set the table a moment, if I may. So, as you mentioned, I've worked in affordable housing previously at MDHA, working on the Envision program. That could be its own effort. It's something I really believe in, transforming areas of concentrated poverty into mixed income communities that provide a lot of housing for folks across a variety of the socioeconomic spectrum. That motivation has really continued forth for me. And the current work at Pathway Lending, which I hope we'll have an opportunity to talk about, is really focused on making sure that we preserve housing in areas that are growing and gentrifying. Because what we've seen happen way too many times is that folks are pushed out of communities as those areas develop. And so you see parts of Nashville getting so much better. For the listeners, I'm using air quotes here, areas getting better. But the problem is the folks who made those areas great in the first place can't afford to live there anymore. And so what we are focused on at the Pathway Housing Fund is preserving apartment communities that are affordable for folks so that the folks who work in those neighborhoods can actually afford to live there. So that's the background for it. We've purchased 3 apartment buildings now, one in Hermitage, one in Donaldson. I knew we needed to invest in Donaldson when I went to a vegan restaurant there and it was next door to a hot yoga place. I mean, that's a sure sign that gentrification is going to accelerate in a community. But the third one we bought was in Hillsboro Village. It's an area that's already obviously grown and developed a lot more. And the building that we purchased is actually one that I walked past on my way to Aiken Elementary School. And so it's a building I've known for a long time. It's 105 years old. But how we found the Mayflower is really the most Nashville story, if I could share that. It is a bit complicated. Some of the listeners may need a flow chart here, but it's all parts of Nashville. So the Mayflower was owned by a woman, Connie Daughtry, and two other couples, Andy and Eva, and Steve and Trudy. And Andy Shukoff, you may remember.
I remember the name.
Yep.
Juvenile judge.
Juvenile court judge. Before Andy ran for judge, he worked at the Legal Aid Society with my father, Ashley Wiltshire, who was the executive director at the Legal Aid Society for 35 years. He never got a promotion, so it's good that he finally moved on. 35 years in the same job. And so unfortunately, Andy and my dad were at the memorial service for Dot Dobbins, a woman you may remember was walking her dog in Germantown and was hit and killed in a story that got some attention. And so they were at Dot Dobbins' memorial service. And Andy says to my dad, well, what's Matt doing now? And my dad says, well, he's got a nonprofit working with Pathway Lending to buy apartment buildings that are affordable, but in the pathway of gentrification. And Andy says, well, I own a building that's affordable, but in the pathway of gentrification. And my dad, somewhat surprised at this juvenile court judge, well, how did that happen? And so here's the story of how Andy came to do it. Andy, when he ran for juvenile court judge, took out a HELOC on his home loan. His across-the-street neighbor, Joe Daughtry, thought this was the most irresponsible thing he'd ever heard, and that Andy and Eva for sure were going to go bankrupt. And so Joe came across the street and said to Eva, Andy's wife, I will allow you, not gift, I will allow you to invest with me in apartment buildings and car washes and other things. Joe was one of these guys who would just do deals and make money on every deal.
I want that neighbor.
Yes, Joe was great. So in 1992, they purchased the Mayflower. So that's how Andy got in. And let me pause here. There is an unbelievable story. This is my pitch for your next episode.
Okay.
Connie and Joe Daughtry's story is unbelievable. And I was going to tell part of that here, but as I was driving over, I thought, this isn't my story to tell. It's Connie's story to tell. Connie is now 92 years old, and her story is an unbelievable story. I hope you'll have her on in a future episode. So Andy is with my dad at Dot Dobbins Memorial Service, finds out there's an apartment. He connects me with Connie. Connie and I, it turns out, go to church together. And so we work out a deal to buy this apartment building, the Mayflower, in Hillsboro Village, 18 units.
You said it was affordable at the time.
It is. And Andy and Connie had just run it that way, had done it had run this building not with any government restrictions on it. They'd done it because they thought it was the right thing to do for our community. And that gets in to the next point. So they say, hey, listen, we've got this deal worked out, but we've got a third partner, Steve. We got to talk to Steve and make sure Steve's okay with it. And I said, of course, talk to Steve. And so Connie and Andy go and talk to Steve. And they say, Steve, we've got someone who wants to buy the Mayflower. And Steve says, yeah, no joke. Everyone wants to buy the Mayflower. It's a super affordable apartment building in the middle of Hillsboro Village. And they said, and Steve was very worried that the new owner was just going to jack the rents up, as has happened to dozens of apartment buildings across our city. And they say, no. This is a nonprofit who wants to run it the same way we've run it. And Steve very skeptically says, well, who's involved in this nonprofit? And Andy says, well, it's Matt Wiltshire. And Steve says, is Matt Wiltshire related to Susan Wiltshire? And Andy says, well, yes, that's his mother. And Steve says, well, Susan was the best professor I had at Vanderbilt. If her son's involved, it must be okay. And so this apartment building was owned by a guy who used to work with my dad, a woman who I go to church with, and another guy who thought my mom was the best professor he ever had. It's just the most Nashville story, and it's so fun.
That's for sure. So how many units is the Mayflower, and how will the same people stay? Will it be marketed in a different way? And how far is the deal? Is the deal done?
The deal is done. We fully own it. We still rely on Connie, who had been providing the property management. But the short answer to your question is we hope nothing will change. Our goal is to buy apartment buildings that are providing good housing to folks, but to keep them affordable. We will invest in them. So the laundry in the basement is all coin operated. We're going to upgrade it to fancy washers and dryers you can pay for with an app. But that's the level of investment we want to make, because every investment we make in the property, we're going to need to raise the rents to pay for the investments. And our total goal is to keep apartment buildings affordable. The way we are able to do that is we've raised low-cost capital from our bank partners, including Pinnacle and Regions and First Farmers, who have invested with Pathway Lending over the last 30 years, as Pathway has done its amazing work to make loans to folks who banks aren't ready to make loans to yet. We've raised $30 million of capital from those banks, and we're using that as our equity to go acquire these apartment buildings and keep them affordable forever.
Like a government program, are there going to be criteria for a new tenant to get in?
The short answer is no. That's one of the beautiful things about the flexibility that we have. Now, the reality is our bank partners don't want to invest with us if we're just going to be renting to billionaires.
Right.
I don't think many billionaires are going to want to move in the Mayflower, although it's awesome. But the reality is we don't have the government restrictions that, for instance, low-income housing tax credit properties have. And so we're meeting a different part of the market. It's folks who, if you make 61% of area median income, you are ineligible to live in a low-income housing tax credit property. And so many times, folks who make too much to live in those properties or too much to live in an MDHA property are the ones who are completely squeezed out of the marketplace.
Yeah, they still can't afford to go someplace decent.
Can't afford to live any place decent. And the problem is developers have bought the apartments where those folks lived, invested in them, put in granite countertops and invested in them and jacked the rents up 40%. And they've done that because that's a good business model. The problem is once you have an apartment unit that you can rent for $1,000 a month, once that goes away and becomes a $1,600 a month apartment, that unit is never coming back ever. Because it's so expensive to build these days. And so you can't replace it. We've got to hold on to what made Nashville great in the first place.
Yeah, and also preserving that lovely brick architecture that's so, appropriate for the community there in Hillsboro Village. Are the other ones, the property in Donaldson and the other ones, architecturally significant in any way?
I think most of the buildings that we have acquired thus far are great places to live. I'm not sure that I'd say they were architectural standouts, but they're beautiful places that provide a great, safe place to live for folks who are working in our city.
How widespread can this be?
There is need across our city, and our footprint is actually across the state. There are really no limits to it. And so if any of the listeners out there have an apartment building that's still affordable, and I mean affordable in the broadest sense, what's affordable in Green Hills may be different from what's affordable in a different part of our city. But the main thing is we want to hold on to properties that folks who work in those communities can actually afford to live in. Because what's happening today is that people are getting pushed further and further out. There is still housing that's affordable. Unfortunately, you've got to drive 65 miles to find it in some cases.
With $5 gas.
With $5 gas. It's making the traffic worse, it's ripping our communities apart, and it's making Nashville a less interesting place to live. And so the beauty of the model that the folks at Pathway have put together is that we do have the flexibility to adapt to the environment. There are other properties in Hillsboro Village that we've taken a look at. There are properties across the city. Heck, there could be something affordable in Belle Meade. If it was affordable for the folks who work on Harding, that we'd take a look at. It's just a matter of meeting the community and finding opportunities to make sure that there's something that is available for everyone.
It's Banner and Company. I'm Demetria Kalodimos. We'll be right back.
Hey, Fidelity. Can I get a second opinion on stocks in the Fidelity app?
With Fidelity, it's easy to get an outside opinion from independent experts in a single score.
And then?
When you're ready, trade U.S. stocks and ETFs with no commissions.
That's right.
I am always right.
Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. $0 commission does not apply to customers designated by Fidelity as a professional equity trader. A limited number of ETFs are subject to a service fee of $100. See details at fidelity.com/commissions. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC, member NYSE SIPC.
So what's in it for the seller?
Yeah.
Other than I'm doing something good for my fellow man.
The great news is we don't ask for a discount from the seller. So the real trick to what we're doing is that our capital needs a lower return. So I'll give a little bit of an example. I hope this isn't too much math for
keep it
for a radio
elementary.
show. I'll keep it elementary. You and I may both be competing to buy an apartment building. You want to buy that building for $10 million. I can also pay $10 million. We can pay the same amount. The difference is you're going to invest $3 million in adding all those granite countertops. And your investors expect a 20% return every year on their capital that they're giving to you. So you have to raise rents to meet the investor expectations. I also can pay $10 million for that apartment building. I'm probably going to invest $500,000 into it, $1 million, because I'm not trying to make it super fancy. I'm just trying to make sure that it stays viable long term. And our investors only need a 4 or 5% return. And so that difference allows me to hold the rent growth down and still have a system that works. So that's the difference. There doesn't need to be a discount from the seller. It's just a discount in how you approach housing in this city and in this country.
Does it only make sense for multifamily? Would this ever apply to a single family home that maybe someone can't hold on to anymore?
At the moment, we're only focused on apartment buildings. But I think that idea of making sure that housing isn't just something that's driven by private equity and high returns for wealthy investors, that philosophy could apply to a variety of different things. Now, we're only focused on the rental market. As you know, having stuff that's available for folks to buy is important as well. That's not the area that we're focused on today, but I think there are a variety of tools, and I think that really is the main point. There are a variety of tools that are required to build a house. We need a bunch of different tools to deal with the housing affordability crisis we're facing in this city, and our tool is one of those. Was
this pioneered somewhere else? Where'd the idea come?
It is complete plagiarism. This is a shout out to Mark Etheridge and the folks at Ascent Housing in Charlotte, North Carolina. After the mayor's race, I was looking around at what I would do next. And I talked a lot on the campaign trail about how vitally important it is to have the public sector, the private sector, the nonprofit sector, and the philanthropic sector aligned to tackle all of the challenges we're facing, whether it's education or homelessness, healthcare, certainly housing. We need alignment between the public and the private and the nonprofit sectors. And I'd read an article about these guys, Ascent Housing, over in Charlotte, and was introduced to them by a friend, and was completely copying their idea. Unfortunately, the secret sauce to their model wasn't allowed under state law in Tennessee. There was a prohibition against cities loaning money to developers to do things that improved affordable housing. We can loan money to sports teams to build new stadiums in this city, but we don't allow lending from public entities to support affordable housing. And so I had
is that a problem that needs to be fixed?
It was, but we fixed it. So this was the thing that caused me to put the conversations with Ascent Housing on hold. But in the spring of 2024, I went to the state legislature, and with some help from some good friends and a great bill, was able to get that prohibition removed. And so that is a tool that we've now put in the toolbox of cities across the state of Tennessee, and one that I'm hopeful that we'll take up. It seems like there may be some interest in that in the current budget that the city's put forward, and I'm hopeful that we'll expand that in the future.
What do we gain when people get to live in proximity to where they work and they spend more time together and involved? I assume that's part of the win-win.
Better communities. I mean, a better place. I mean, one of the issues that we really have is that we are all in our bubbles. I mean, all of us. Liberals point at conservatives, conservatives point at liberals. I don't know, folks who are Knicks fans point at folks who are, San Antonio fans. I think this world has gotten so segmented and we're all in our own silo. I think when we have communities where folks live in proximity to each other, it's just a richer environment for all of us. And so I think that's why the part that I'm most focused on is making sure we want communities to grow and thrive and get better. That just means folks want to live there and folks want to move there. That's why the areas improve, because there's more demand for housing in those areas. And while that's a good thing, it's not good when folks get displaced and pushed out of the communities that they built in the first place. And so holding on to that, making sure that new Nashville doesn't completely replace, but can build on to old Nashville, I think is what's so exciting about this.
Has anyone researched whether people stay longer? I would assume if you can afford the place you live and you love it, you're not going to be moving every 3 years.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And the best example is of the first two apartments. I mean, there are people who live at the Mayflower who were there before Connie bought it in 1992. So a few of the residents who live there have lived there for more than 30 years. When we bought the Mayflower, the average tenure of the residents there was 58 months, almost 6 years. And the average tenure of residents in apartments is only like to be there for a year and a half. And so folks are choosing to stay in places if they can afford to.
Yeah. I mean, now you've got younger tenants that are jumping at the 4 months free or 3 months free, and then that balloon comes due and they're hopping off into another complex.
It's just unstable. It's fundamentally destabilizing, and plus a real pain to have to move constantly from one place to another. What we really want to make sure that we're offering to folks is an opportunity, if they choose, to stay in their apartment and not getting priced out because of the latest rent increase.
Yeah. You think we're overbuilt?
No. In fact, I wish we would build more. I do think we're in a little bit of a supply bubble right now. I mean, the facts are the facts. You referenced concessions. The reality is, because of the excitement about Nashville and because of where interest rates were in 21 and 22, there was a huge increase in development activity. And so there has been this supply bubble. But people keep moving here because this is a great city. I would suggest it's the best city in America. And so folks are going to continue to move here, whether it's to chase their dream as a songwriter or to work at one of the great colleges and universities we have here. Folks are going to continue to move here. And what I am most scared about is that the construction has stopped and folks are still moving here. And so we're still working through the supply bubble, and we will. But it takes a long time to build. There's all the regulations around it. It takes a long time to assemble the land and then just to do the construction itself. What I'm most worried about is a couple of years from now, when that whiplash happens, the supply's been soaked up, folks are still moving here, and there's no more options. And that's when you're going to see rent prices go through the roof again. And we can see the train coming down the tracks at us, and we're not doing what we need to do to save ourselves.
I moved to town in 1984, and I can tell you the rent on my first apartment, and it was a brand new apartment.
Yep. What was it?
Brand new, $350.
I mean, think about that.
I mean, you were making a lot less, but
Sure.
But really, percentage-wise, not really.
Right.
But I look back, and I thought I was in a palace.
$350.
Yeah.
I mean, holy smokes.
Do you remember your first place?
I remember the first place that I rented out after college was actually in San Francisco. So it was pretty expensive.
Yeah.
I went to San Francisco and then New York before I moved back to Nashville.
So Nashville seemed like a bargain when you got home.
Nashville seemed like a bargain when I got home, but it's not a bargain anymore. That's for sure.
It's Banner and Company. And my guest is Matt Wiltshire, one-time candidate for mayor, now working on tackling affordable housing in Nashville. We'll be right back. You referenced your blended family. Before we finish today, tell me a little bit about that Brady Bunch life. Is that a complete fallacy, or was there a tense period when you guys were getting your respective kids together?
For sure. It's never easy to blend two of anything.
Yeah.
But I'm so grateful for it. And it's such a joy. I think what's been most helpful for me is the perspective that it's given me. Human beings are just different, diverse entities. All of us, even kids from the same parents, grow up with different expectations and different ideas. There was a TV show with Michael J. Fox when we were kids, Family Ties,
yeah.
Where Michael J. Fox was completely different from his parents. I laughed at it as a kid. I appreciate it as a parent now. And so each of the 6 kids is their own human being, and it's given me a real deep appreciation for the beauty and depth and diversity of our world. And it has also been totally exhausting and put a lot of wrinkles on my face, but it's been fun.
I can't even imagine the carpooling flow chart.
At one point, we had 6 kids in 6 different schools.
Oh my God.
And no drivers. We've moved on from that now. We've got kids who are working, kids who have moved out of state. We just had one who graduated from college in Ireland, actually. So the kids are spreading all over and building their own lives, and it's really fun to get to watch.
You know, I got a chance to talk to former Governor Bredesen about teaching his granddaughter to drive. Were you the driving teacher in the family, or was Chrissy doing that?
It's always easier to teach someone who's not your own kid. Your own kids have less patience with you.
Yeah.
So you kind of have a little bit of a trade-off. But I mentioned all the different perspectives. I had one kid who didn't want to learn to drive ever and is ready to move to New York. Yeah.
That's a thing. They see no need, and I don't know if it's fear or just that sense of responsibility where I don't want the keys. I couldn't wait to get the keys.
Me either.
Yeah.
And I don't want to, sound like too much of a boomer. There are kids we've had who got their driver's license on their 16th birthday. So there's still some of that, but much less mobility than I had expected.
Do you think anyone's going to lure you back into a political race again?
I don't think anyone will lure me anywhere. And at the moment, we were just talking about family. I really love the time that I get to spend with my family. And I'm super motivated by the job that we have right now. So that's not something that's on my horizon.
Yeah. Again, for people that might be listening that have got a piece of property, how do they get on your radar, I guess?
Absolutely. I'll give my email address, matt.wiltshire@pathwaylending.org. Absolutely. Any listener who has an apartment building, we'd certainly welcome a discount, but we're not expecting a discount. We'll pay full price for it as long as it meets our target of sort of being in the pathway of gentrification and being affordable, whatever that really means today. Would love to hear from any of your listeners.
People have heard of the Barnes Fund, and there was a gentleman, Bill Barnes, a reverend, that many Nashvillians look up to this day. He played a role in what you're doing now and in growing up. Talk a little bit about that.
A huge influence on my life. Our family attended Edge Hill United Methodist Church, so I heard from Bill Barnes on Sundays. And Bill talked about the importance of affordable housing, even back in the 1980s. But what he was really talking about was this idea of making sure that we are in community with each other. I'm Christian, but Jesus, whatever your faith tradition may be, Jesus preached to all of us. And I think we are all better when we are sitting at the table together. And so this is not an overtly religious mission on my part, but it certainly fulfills what Bill talked about on Sundays and the vision for the kingdom that I think we could achieve here.
What's the one dream that you have yet to see to fruition?
The full realization of the Pathway Housing Fund. On a professional level, it would be the full realization of the Pathway Housing Fund. I think the opportunity that we have to create a different structure for housing across the city and across the state, and even further, potentially in the future, would be the fulfillment of life's work from my time in finance and investment banking through city service in the mayor's office and public policy, and then into public housing at MDHA. This sort of feels like the culmination of those things. And I think the math works and it makes sense, and doing this would be really great.
Is that one in every zip code? Is that one on...
I don't know that it has to be that regimented. I mean, I would love that vision personally. But I do think, look, the folks in Nashville criticize NIMBYs a lot. And NIMBYs are really folks who love their neighborhoods and want to protect the quality of life in their communities. And I understand that. I don't want to be negative about it. I hope that we can demonstrate and share through the work that we do that having a variety of housing alternatives in your neighborhood is good for you. Because, I mean, even just in the purest economic sense, the folks who own retail establishments can't find any employees who are willing to work there. And so now they're having to charge $16 for a hamburger because they have to pay more and more and more because people aren't going to drive 35 miles for that job. I think it just makes more sense economically, in addition to being richer for all of us in community, if we can have this vision of neighborhoods that everybody can live in, that have meaning and purpose for each of us.
Banner & Company is a production of the New Nashville Banner. This episode is produced by Steve Harouche and edited by me. The original music is by Verlin Thompson. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts or go to NashvilleBanner.com. You're in good company. Our final question is in that classy little fish bowl there without a fish.
I feel nervous and excited.
Yeah, good.
Let's see what we got. The final question is from Margot McCormick. Do you think
the money we're spending on this football stadium is going to make a difference in our football team's performance?
Not directly in the team's performance. I have full faith and confidence. I'm a big Titans fan, and I'm hopeful about Cam and the team that we're building. But I do think that that I am hopeful for the team's future. I'm on the record having supported this current stadium deal, not because I think that communities ought to be investing, but because the alternative, which was the city putting up $1 billion of its own money to repair the old stadium, was just a bad economic deal. I'm grateful for where we are, and I'm optimistic about the future and all the great things that are coming to our city, as long as we can hold on to housing so that the folks who made Nashville great can still afford to live here.